The White House talks compromise on debt limit negotiations. Will Republicans stand firm? I'm Alan Barton. Stand by for the front page. Joining me to discuss the state of the debt ceiling talks is Alison Fraser, Director of the Institute for Economic Policy Studies at the Heritage Foundation. All right, Alison, pleasure to have you with us. Thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
All right, so there was a meeting yesterday with leaders from Capitol Hill at the White House, and there will be another meeting on Sunday. But this morning, there was a press conference where the president offered this.
The economic challenges that we face weren't created overnight, and they're not going to be solved overnight.
And that is only the 53rd time that I've heard the president say that in the last 2 weeks, thereby indicating that it was all Bush's fault, and I don't have time to fix all that is wrong. So what is the president trying to hide here?
Well, I think what he's trying to hide are his own policies. So let's start with the stimulus. That was a spectacular failure. We had an unbelievably gloomy jobs report today, and it's about time that he start blaming the right set of policies, which are his own. Then we move to Obamacare, we move to all of the actions of the EPA and NLRB and others, and no wonder we don't have jobs being created.
Tell us about some of this D.C. kabuki dance that is going on with this type of negotiation, because each side postures, and then you've got the media and the media's agenda as well, and you have like conservative media. You get the feeling that they're throwing up false flags to stake out to make sure that the Republicans aren't doing certain things. What do you suppose is really taking place behind the closed doors?
Well, that's a great question, because nobody really knows what's going on behind those closed doors. And it is, you hit it exactly right. It is a lot of kabuki. There's political theater going on, a lot of trial balloons being floated, a lot of talking to the base. And the bottom line is we don't really know what's going on. We've got a couple of good ideas that they're going to look for some substantial cuts and that they're going to look for more revenues. E.g. tax hikes. But exactly how they're going to do that, I don't know. And it's important that they do really, really major changes that put us on the path to getting our spending under control and making sure we don't run up as much debt as we're supposed to. But from the policy side, the devil's in the details.
Well, in regard to these so-called revenue increases, which are tax increases, or as Obama likes to call it, spending in the tax code, which is a rhetorical device of such audacity. This is from the man, The Audacity of Audacity, his new book. That's the book he'll be writing after he leaves the presidency. It'll just be The Audacity of Audacity. Are any of these so-called revenue increases in any form really on the table? One would think they have to be. I mean, politics is the art of compromise. And you got to figure at some point there's going to be some give up on the Republican side about that issue. What do you think they'll give up on?
Yeah, well, I think that there's going to be a mixture of things that they're going to be looking at. What actually happens in the end, I don't really know. But I think there's going to be a mixture of things that will play to Obama's left. There will be some things that work for the right as well. And I think the real thing, and this is what you hear Cantor coming back to time and time again, I'd be happy to talk loopholes, but you have to do it in a way that's revenue neutral. So they're trying to really bring back the notion of actually reforming the tax code and not just going after these loopholes in a wholesale kind of fashion. So I think you're going to have some corporate jets. I think you may have looking at the indexing a little bit better, differently. I certainly hope they don't go after oil breaks because, those are important policies that we need to be thinking about. What is our tax code really supposed to look like?
Well, let's hope they go after those corporate jet people, because this is really a travesty, and apparently
it's a total travesty.
I forget who I read. I think they said if you put that corporate jet deduction and you take that out and you let that run for about 5,000 years, you equal 1 year of the current deficit.
I think it was Krauthammer who said that. Yeah,
it was Krauthammer.
Yeah, and don't forget that corporate jet loophole first came up in Obama's stimulus package. So he was for it before he was against it.
Yeah, but it hasn't had enough time, you see. This took a long time to be like this. It's going to take a long time to get out many ideas. Years and years. All right, let's bring in our panelists,
well,
Alex
why does he
Epstein.
want to double down on it?
Yeah, exactly. Let's bring on our panelists. Alex Epstein, a fellow at the Ayn Rand Center for Individual Rights. Terry Jones, back from his vacation, associate editor of Investors Business Daily. Terry, looking tanned from his time in Alaska. Okay, so here's Senator McConnell last week setting the tone for these meetings. Let's listen.
I will tell them what Republicans are looking for in this debate: to cut spending now, cap runaway spending in the future, and save our entitlements from bankruptcy, and to get our economy moving. And I will tell him the truth about requests by some in his party that we increase spending and raise taxes as a way of solving the debt and jobs crisis that precipitated the president's request to raise the debt limit in the first place. Not only are they counterproductive from the standpoint of an economic recovery, they're also politically impossible, since Republicans oppose tax hikes and Democrats have already shown they won't raise taxes in a down economy either.
Don't get too excited, Senator McConnell. I mean, there's too much charisma. Stop it. We can't get the message when you are my God. All right, so is this a message, Terry, we'll start with you. Is this really a message to Obama that Republicans are not going to budge? Or is this a message to less conservative Republicans in the Senate that they better not put tax hikes on the table, or to both? What ground is he?
Hearing Deputy Dog there, old cartoon, speak. I think it's a little bit of both, actually. You know, I've heard Eric Cantor say, like, look, we're not gonna pass a tax hike out of the House of Representatives. Don't worry about that. And I kind of take him at his word on that. So, you know, I don't think there will be any significant tax hikes coming out of this. Now, whether there are revenue neutral erasures of tax breaks, or whether there are some subsidies that are reduced or whatever, that's another thing entirely. But I think people have to remember there's one thing, and there are basic principles that have to be thought about here. And one is that every dollar that the government spends or taxes is $1 less that the private sector has to create productive economic activity. So that should be kept in mind through this whole thing. And when they come out with a deal, people need to look at it and think of it in those terms, because every dollar they give back to the private economy will have benefits in terms of long-term growth, jobs, all the things we like, incomes, and that has to be the guiding principle here.
Alex, obviously you've written a lot about the Fed's attempts to prop up this economy through this incredibly failed stimulus. I mean, the jobs numbers today are a joke. So talk to us about how economic stability here can be caused by government, where the government is creating uncertainty in terms of a business environment.
Well, I mean, I'll just take the industry that I study most, which is petroleum. I mean, if you're an oil company, the amount of technology that exists today to create new forms of oil, better forms of oil. I mean, we can create oil from coal, we can create it from natural gas, we can create it from 20,000 feet under the ground. We can do it in all these amazing ways, and yet we see oil supplies not rising all that quickly. Well, why is that? Because there's an enormous amount of fear about what would happen if you tried to use all of this technology. Now, by contrast, if we take a place that actually has some measure of economic freedom, North Dakota, where they have the Bakken Shale, who knows what the unemployment is in North Dakota? 3.5%. So if we actually didn't have this whole anti-industrial policy of Obama's and of previous administrations, the whole nation could potentially look like North Dakota, both with oil industries and with other industries as well.
Alison, going back to you, the CBO calculates a 34% deficit in 15 years, even with changes to current laws. So what specific cuts in spending can the government realistically make without theoretically hurting the recovery? They say that cutting government spending will hurt the recovery. What's the case there?
Well, I really think that it's much more important to worry about getting a growth agenda on the tax side. So this is where we have to have revenue neutral tax reform. We don't need to be going after wholesale tax expenditures. You know, I get my loophole in again. And then we need to get down to, we need Congress, we need Washington to get down to the business of cutting spending. One of the most threatening, damaging things to us in the economy is our runaway debt. We're about almost to the point by the end of the decade where just our high levels of debt alone is going to really stagnate the economy. So we've got to get a handle on that. And if Washington waits a couple of years, they are going to be swamped by interest payments. So I think you need to see some real cuts in discretionary spending that happen immediately. I also think one of the things that must happen immediately is to begin to really do strong reforms in the entitlement programs, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. And in my view, they have to be market-oriented reforms, not doubling down on the failed approaches of the past, which is to cram down on providers, ratchet down on provider costs, and things like that. We need to bring markets, competition, choice, and control with the patients, with patients through Medicare and Medicaid. Social Security, we need ownership and control on that side, and to increase savings. Those are changes that need to start immediately. A couple of easy things they could do, at least easy to me, would be increasing the retirement age and changing the indexing of Social Security and the Medicare premiums.
And a final question for you, Alison. Obviously, all this is happening in a lens and a context of the 2012 campaign and the election next year. Why don't we take a look at a recent Bachmann campaign ad?
I fought against the wasteful bailout, against the stimulus. I will not vote to increase the debt ceiling. I'm Michelle Bachmann, and I approve this message.
I mean, one of the big questions here underlying this is if they don't come up with an agreement, say there is a stalemate, there's this idea that the U.S. is going to default on its obligations.
Right.
But I think a lot of us think about it and go, it doesn't quite make sense. There's something like $200 billion or more coming into the Treasury every month from income and revenue. So wouldn't the government, in fact, have enough money to cover our debts? And wouldn't they, in that case, if there was not a deal, make some agreement or pass whatever law is necessary to pay first its obligations and keep the market stable, and then deal with its own internal budget problems?
Well, that would be something that would be really easy for them to do, and there is such a bill. It's the Toomey-McClintock bill, and they could easily pass that so that it would, say, put Secretary Geithner at ease that he wouldn't have to default on the nation's debt. Even if they don't, as you say, you know, the deficit is 43 cents out of every dollar. That means 57 cents, if I can do my math right, is still available to pay and service our debt on an ongoing kind of basis. So I think that this whole notion that they're ramping up and we're going to automatically default on the debt, or the nation is going to automatically default on its debt, on its treasuries, really is gamesmanship, and it's something that the Treasury Secretary, in my view, really shouldn't be embarking on. There's going to be revenues to service the debt.
Particularly if we go after those corporate jet owners. Corporate jet
Don't
owners. Get rid of that
forget.
deduction. We can pay off Greece's debt. Not only just our O's, we can handle
right.
the entire everything just off of those dang corporate jet owners. Thank you, Alison. Always fun to have you here.
Thank you.
You can find more of Alison Fraser's work at heritage.org, and that's all the time we have. Viewers, please add your voice to the mix. Should Republicans be reaching some sort of compromise on the debt limit? Or should they hold firm to the concept of no new taxes, no new revenue? Click the comment button below. Join the discussion. For Alison Fraser, Alex Epstein, Terry Jones, I'm Alan Barton. You've been watching Front Page.